Welcome to the Baseball Blueprint Podcast, your home for all things player development, where we highlight some of the best instructors in the game of baseball. This podcast is brought to you by Baseball Bluebook. Are you in the book? I'm your host, Cody Dennis, and today's guest is national champion and award-winning coach. He has experience at nearly every level of college baseball. He's also been involved with USA Baseball as the 2023 U18 base running coordinator, as well as having experience as an assistant with Great Britain's U23 team. He currently leads the baseball team at Georgia Gwinnett College. We're happy to welcome Jeremy Sheetinger. Sheets, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Hey, Cody, I appreciate you having me on, man. Looking forward to the conversation.
This is going to be good. So, Sheets, let's get right into it. What initially drew you into coaching, and how'd your career begin?
So I would say, just like most of us, initially, it's always the influence of another coach. And probably briefly, but not so briefly, I'm a Kentucky boy, grew up a basketball fan, basketball goal in my driveway. I had the basketball goal in our neighborhood. So basketball, 20 minutes from Rupp Arena, huge Kentucky fan. That's my life. And I played baseball, but I was, Cody, for most references will get this, is like I was the kid that played right field and hitting the 9-hole. And I just didn't care. I played wiffle ball, I played baseball, I loved it, but I really loved basketball. I spent my days dreaming and wanting and wishing, working on basketball. And I got drafted by a coach my 12-year-old year, Bud Ritchie, and he called me and he said he called me at my house before cell phones, and he said, "Look, I've watched you. You're my son's age. I know you're a good player, but I know no one's ever worked with you, and I don't think you know the game the way that you should. I think you could be really good at it. I want to coach you this summer. I want to teach you, and I want you to be ready for that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Coach. But, my first love is basketball." Yeah. And he goes, "Yep, and I don't see very many 6-foot-tall, chubby white dudes in the NBA. Yeah. So you might want to hear what I'm saying here." That's and awesome. I said, "All right, Coach, you got me." Now, a couple things happened that summer. A few months before school let out, my house burned down. We had a house fire. And so I was living in a hotel and going back and forth to practice and doing different things. And just that dynamic, I think, changed, getting out of the hotel, getting away from all that, mess, gave me a chance to really dive into baseball. And he taught me. He grabbed me and pulled me in from right field and put me at first base. He grabbed me from the 9-hole and put me in the 4-hole, taught me how to hit, taught me how to talk on defense, taught me how to play first base. And it changed everything for me, man. And 19-1, we're probably the greatest youth baseball team in Frankfort, Kentucky history. I'll put that out there. Nobody can dispute it. But it changed everything for me, man. Baseball became my passion. I was fortunate enough to play for him, I think, 3 more summers. And it changed the whole trajectory of my life. And I knew I wanted to coach. I thought I wanted to be a high school coach. One of my first college coaches brought me into his office. He said, "Yeah, I know you talked about coaching. Why do you want to do high school?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I had good high school coaches, and I'm just, I'd like to do that." "Have you ever thought about college, man? Because you got some personality. You like to talk. Maybe you can recruit. And yeah, tell me, what's that look like?" He goes, "Yeah, you get paid the same, but you just coach baseball." And I'm like, "Well, man, that sounds like the plan for me." Yeah. So, like, literally my sophomore year, I switched into wanting to coach college, and I've just tried to take opportunities that put myself in a position to where I can build my resume, I can learn, I can be better prepared for the next job. And so, to save the listeners' time, a couple NAIA stops, a Division I stop for 3 years, a D2 stop for a couple. I was a D3 head coach for 3 years. I worked out of coaching at the ABCA for 4 years. I was a scout for the Braves during those 4 years. And this is just finished my 5th year at GGC. So I love the calling of coaching. I love coaches. I love all my best friends are baseball coaches. And I just think the unique opportunity we have to do what Bud Ritchie did for me and change the trajectory of somebody's life, I think that opportunity comes well before what bunt play we put on in the 7th.
That's awesome. That's deep. Wow.
Yeah,
pretty early. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So let's dig into that a little bit. Your early on part of your career, and again, you were, as you said, looking more towards the high school level.
Yeah.
As you started to get your toes wet at the college level, what were some of the maybe more unexpected challenges that you saw that you had to encounter there?
Well, if I was smart and I wanted to stay out of debt and make my checking account appreciate me, I would have coached high school.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, if you want to go right into teaching and get that teaching job and that base salary and add a coaching stipend on top, man, you can go to eat when you want, and you can get a house, and like you can. But I decided to go the baseball college coaching route, and that is one I call it the world's biggest weed eater. You're going to have a lot of people that want to do it, and within about 2 or 3 years, it's going to start cutting people out because you just can't do it for no money. The entry level for a college coach. I'll give you a quick story. My first year, I'm getting out of playing. I want to coach college. There's an opening at Georgetown College. Brand new head coach comes in. I'm fortunate that I know one of the players at Georgetown. I'm working my summer gig with them. And I said, well, man, I really want to coach college. Can you say something to your new head coach and see if he wants an assistant? And he goes, I'll do it, man. I'm meeting with him tomorrow. So he comes back and he goes, hey, I talked with coach, man. He said definitely wants to hear from you. So I reach out and, hey, 2 days later, hey, can you come up and we'll meet? Yeah. And I'm driving up. And, of course, I got my dad who knows nothing about sports. He was the best sports dad ever. But he knows nothing about college coaching either. And he's like, hey, make sure, you talk to him. I mean, I think 20,000 is probably the base that you should take. And you need benefits because you're going to come off my benefits in a couple of years. And let's see if you can get that done. So in my head, I'm thinking 20 in benefits. And I sit down with him and we're going through it. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to give you a shot. You're a young guy. You're fired up. You want to coach. This is exciting. And I look forward to having you. And I'm like, man, that's great, coach. I'd love to do it. But we didn't talk about it. What are the financials of it all? And he was like, yeah, there's no financials. That's why I didn't bring it up. And I'm like, yeah, but I got to make something. And he goes, no, there's no money. I have one full-time assistant and that's him. And you can be a volunteer and figure out how to make money around coaching. But he goes, I'll give you a handshake every day and I'll take you to the cafe and get you a ham sandwich if you want it. Like, that's all I got.
Yeah.
He goes, but that's how you break into coaching. And I just didn't know that. And I went back and tried to explain it. And I substitute taught that entire year. My second year, I was a $5,000 GA at Brescia University. I worked at a metal factory from 4 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon so I could coach from 2 to 10.
Yep.
When I was at Kentucky, I was a $0 GA and had to pay for my master's out of pocket and do lessons to make ends meet. And I think that's what you start to find out, Cody, is, am I really suited for this? Am I willing to sacrifice, meals and having the lights turned on in my apartment? Can I sleep in the locker room floor? Can I do things that others aren't? And it took me 8 years to get to a full-time job. And I think that's the trajectory of most guys. And so it cuts out guys that can't sacrifice like that or aren't privileged to sacrifice like that. And it sort of opens doors for guys that are willing to lifer it and fight through it.
Oh yeah. It's a tough route early on for a lot of, I would say one of the bigger challenges that you see anymore, even because you're seeing with the addition of a third paid assistant, a little bit more of an expansion in who gets paid.
Sure.
But even now it becomes more of like, okay, now we've got 3 guys who are making money, but we're still got guys who want to break into coaching, right? You've got that extra.
Well, remember that's at select Division I universities, and you still have Division I schools that can't pay for the third assistant. Right. And I think a lot of folks blanket that over the rest of the levels where, look at the situation we're in. I know we're going to talk about our program a little bit. Mm-hmm. We have 1 full-time assistant coach and 5 or 6 volunteer coaches.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that we do uniquely is we'll take on a volunteer guy, and I've been there before and lived the life, is, hey, you serve here for a year or 2, I will make sure your next job is a paid job. So we've put guys into Division I recruiting jobs, JUCO head coaching jobs, Division II and NAIA assistant jobs that are full-time. I just, the sacrifice that's required, and we try to do something uniquely to make sure those guys land on their feet and stay in coaching. But next year we will have literally, I think it's 5 of our 7 coaches will be volunteer coaches.
Wow. That's incredible.
Part of it, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Part of the journey.
Yeah.
Speaking of the journey, when it comes to your teaching philosophy, how has that evolved from the earlier parts of your career to where you're at now?
Immensely, and thank God every day that it has. when you first get into coaching, you really coach what you know,
Mhm.
and a lot of that's what you were just taught. So a lot of first-year coaches teach what their previous college experience was taught, or they had a really good high school coach. And at 22, you don't know any different. You just know what you know, and you sort of take it as gospel. Now, what you don't have is the perspective that some coach, whether it was your college coach or your high school coach, he worked through a few decades to come up with those philosophies. So what
Yeah.
you don't have is the perspective of back and forth with a player, or 7 examples to make sure the 8th time he hears it, he gets it. You
Yeah.
don't have that. You just have hardcore, this is what I believe. And, if I still taught the same way I believed ground balls should be taught, the same way hitting mechanics should be taught, you can go down the list inside the game. I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking with you, buddy. I think what happens is you start to realize there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and that's real in coaching.
Yep.
I feel like you need to try to have a working knowledge of all the various ways that skills are taught, and you sort of start to notice that you lend yourself down these certain pathways, and then you go down those pathways and you start to grow the thought.
Mhm.
And hey, that's a great thought and a great philosophy. Does it apply, and does it warrant success? You can have a great offensive philosophy. That's what I always talk about with young hitting coaches, is you can have in your head what the mechanics are supposed to look like, and what you see offensive baseball being. But if you average 3 runs a game, you suck as an offensive coach.
Yeah.
And I think going back to my first few years, it was so mechanically driven that I did not understand offense or team offense, where now our team, we don't even discuss mechanics. And we led the country in 12 different offensive categories this year. And and not one kid knows what I believe mechanically. So I think as you grow, you start to figure out it's less about putting a flag at this is what I believe, and more, hey, this is what I see. This is what I notice. This is what I notice really high level people doing. Now, you can't blanket it on every kid, because not every kid physically can move like the advanced mover.
Right.
But you do have things that guide what you say and how you do it, how you move an offense, or again a pitching staff or a defensive unit. So it's evolved enough to know that I don't know it all, and I'm learning every day. I'm growing and evolving, even within a system that's allowed us to have real success. I'm still fine tuning it and adjusting based on the feedback or the examples I get in game from our players. So
Yeah.
it's settled in concrete, but it's still drying, and I'm still letting the game and the players teach me how to move it forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's funny, these episodes haven't been released yet, but our past 2 guests, and Trent Mangero and Zan Barksdale, they both said the same thing very similarly about how you don't want to make these concrete positions for these guys, because you start to pigeonhole movers, and you start to pigeonhole the way people play the game.
Jerry Wan's son would tell you, Cody, there's no always and nevers in baseball.
That's awesome.
So you can't say, hey, you always turn this way, you always put your glove here. It just doesn't work. I can name, hey, you always do this. I got 3 plays where you can't do that. And I think it forces you to see the bigger picture. And again, at the end of the day, it's less about what we know, and it's really all about what our players know and can apply. Mm-hmm. So it's not this accumulation of knowledge that we can sit in any room and out coach the coaches. That doesn't matter. It's how do you communicate it and relate it and drill it into, and then watch it apply and still move it with your players. Like, it's one thing to discuss something and train it, but if they can't blend it with the game environment, none of it matters anyway. So it's a constant back and forth of, this is how much they understand. Can they make adjustments on the fly? Are they thinking the same way that I'm thinking? And that, to me, is the essence of coaching, is getting guys on the same page, moving in the same direction.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So diving into, and again, you talk about, trying to stay away from the more specific technical pieces of things.
Yeah.
If we wanted to dive into, let's say, a specific movement pattern that we want to teach, are there any that you can think of? And again, you're a guy who has experience in a lot of different spaces, from infield play to base running to outfield play. are there technical movements that you've seen develop over time, especially since you've started coaching, that you're like, ooh, I taught that way differently than I teach that now?
Man, we'd have to go into part 6 and 7 on this interview, man. Yeah, 100%. Again, I think as a young infield guy, you always got to have these foundational principles. Like if you go work a camp and, hey, we're going to do 2 teaching clinics, so make sure you're ready to teach. And I could stand in front of a group of infielders, and I had the whole 45-minute clinic mapped out into 5 different parts, and here are the drills, and here are the – and then they walk away, and you go, how much did they retain? And I noticed majority of those kids couldn't make the same moves I was teaching. So either I didn't have enough time, or I didn't communicate well, or they just can't figure it out. And all of it doesn't work. So it's like coming back to, hey, man, like I believe in this. Brian Green hit me with this. He's the head coach of Wichita State. We were at Kentucky together. And he said, look, if you can take anything you teach in the game, can you boil it down to 7 words? Can you take 7 and make it 5? Can you turn 5 into 4? Can you turn 4 into 3? Can you turn 3 into 2? No? Great, it's 3. And you always try to simplify everything that you do to give the kids, like, I got these 3 principles. Boom, these are the 3 things I believe in infield play. And I'll give you to them very simply. I believe in championship catch play. So every day we have a catch play routine. It's very detailed. We do it literally every single day before every single game. And at the end of the day, I believe what it does over time is it changes guys who are mechanically just kind of sling. So what that means is they may drop the elbow, drop the hand, and their head gets tilted. They're aggressive on their front side, so the glove flails out, and the ball always has run on it, and it either sinks or takes off. And over time, if you crush them on championship catch play, they start to, without me really directing it, their feet get lined up better, which means their shoulders are lined up better, which means they feel that move, so they stop doing that move. The hand stays tight. Their head stays on target, because you talk about making things stay still. Instead of pulling on the front side, the glove just stays dead or it turns over, and you start to have kids throw, and they turn into championship catch play guys. That was a simple term, and there's a long process to get them there. But they always know, our infielders, hey, what do you guys believe in? We believe in championship catch play. We believe in the nose on the baseball. So every time there's a throw, a play, anytime you go field a baseball, you put your nose on it because you want that ball to stick. If the ball doesn't stick in your glove, he's safe. Mm-hmm. So again, we want championship catch play. Ball always sticks in our glove. And again, the biggest thing we do is we communicate. That's how you – and again, I don't care if it looks awful, Cody. If you came and watched us take ground balls and you went, you guys don't defend it very well. I mean, we fielded 970, which is the second best in NAIA. I mean, I don't care how it looks. I care how it performs.
Yeah.
I do think that a lot of that's one example, but I do think a lot of coaches want it to check the visual box. Mm-hmm. And what they're not going back is, do the numbers back up the visual? And if they don't, you look good, but the ball doesn't stick. You look good, but you can't field it. You look good, but you can't play catch. I just don't go there. I don't need it to check a visual box. It needs to check the box that wins. And I could do that with you down hitting and base running and all of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's when we talk about the more tactile, disciplines in the game.
Yeah.
You've worked a ton with Alan Yeager on the mental side of the game.
Yes. Yeah.
What are some common problem areas that you see when it comes to player development, when it comes to the mental game?
One of the biggest is I don't feel like the game moves really fast. It's a slow game, and I know we're always trying to find ways to speed it up so fans will watch. I don't care if fans watch at all. The game's perfect. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, I think we underestimate how many thoughts that our players are having in the moment. And I think self-awareness is one of the greatest qualities that any person, let alone any player, can have. And if a self-aware player really understood how many thoughts they have, man, then you better learn a system that allows you to cut through those thoughts and stay focused on what matters the most in the moment. I think the game moves really fast for kids, and they have no tool that allows them to be present. I think they're swinging at pitch number 5 of the at-bat, still pissed off at pitch number 1 that the umpire called a strike they thought was a ball. Yeah. I think you got kids that are walking 3 in a row, and they're still pissed about the one call they didn't get 2 batters ago, and they wish they could go back and change it because it would have changed the entire inning. It doesn't matter, sweetheart. You've walked 3 in a row. Bases are loaded. Now what?
Yep.
You know, it doesn't matter. It's 5th pitch of the at bat. It's 2-2, and there's a hanging breaking ball, and you're still mad about pitch number 1. And I think helping guys understand that the game keeps moving. It doesn't stop. And so if you have a tool, which again for us, we call it being mindful, which at its base level is learning how to breathe, learning how to be intentional about your breath, letting the breath be something that brings you back to present, how to stay neutral. The game wants to take you on a roller coaster ride. It's your decision not to buy the ticket, and you can stay neutral, and you can, you know, literally see the place from a world of adjustments, which is where the game's, you know, played. Like you talk about like really good hitters. You know, I think it said like average hitters make adjustments game to game. Above average hitters make adjustments at bat to a bat. Elite hitters make adjustments pitch to pitch. Yeah. Like the game's made in adjustments. And so if you don't have something that allows you to take a swing, feel it, work through it, stop, recognize what the next pitch is going to be, have a plan walking into that pitch, and that all happened in 15 seconds. If you don't have that tool, this game's going to beat you up and pass you by.
Oh, yeah.
So I do know that the breath and controlling thoughts and being present and staying neutral, those to me are qualities that been doing this for so long, Cody. I can sit in the stands and tell you who's in control, who's here in the moment, you know, and know who's probably long-term going to be very successful. And that's where we're trying to get all of our players to graduate into. And it takes time. Sometimes it takes a whole year. Sometimes it takes into the 2nd year for him to really go, man, now I know what you were talking about. Now we got it. Now let's work at it. You become what you practice. We got to work at it every day. So we've become a black belt ninja at this thing. That to me is one of the qualities I wish more guys had. Self-awareness that leads to what's really going on between your ears in the game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Looking back in to your career now, are there any moments in your career that you'd consider milestone moments in terms of your development as a coach?
Yeah. Man, I got a lot. I had a couple my early couple years making no money. Like I said, working at the metal factory. I had a couple like driving to the metal factory at 4 a.m. going, is this really what I'm doing?
Yep.
Is this really what a 26-year-old, you know, wants to do with his life? And, you know, a couple years later had another opportunity, and same thing. Am I really doing this? And I think, you know, you can't do this to get rich. You can't do this. I just don't know, you know, if we'll ever truly live comfortably in my household. And that's part of it. That's what we signed up for. Yeah. But yeah, I've had a couple of those like gut check moments. You know, but I think it's a really good process, because you either get out or you start to look at it and go, okay, well, what adjustments can I make? I made one professionally, 2 actually, within the last year. One was I'm going to cut out all the excess, and I'm just going to coach GGC and the Cape Cod League.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to do. Those are the only 2 things I do in coaching. And I'm going to cut out, again, I hate to do it. I hate to move on from USA Baseball. I hate to move on from the Canes. I hate to move on from some of the extra stuff, but I'm only going to do those 2 things. And then in order to, you know, be better financially, I'm starting to dive into this consulting world of helping coaches. Yeah. And it's proved to be unbelievable. And it's an element that's going to allow me to stay where I'm at and stay in coaching. So I do think those gut checks make you, again, self-awareness, but self-evaluate and go, okay, man, what else can I do? Because I do want to stay in this, and it forces you to make some really strategic moves. Those happen all the time. One of the other ones happened, I've referenced this a lot here lately. Gary Henderson, who's the head coach at Utah, was with us at Kentucky, and he said to me one time, we were talking about being a pitching coach or hitting coach, and he goes, Sheets, every young guy wants to be the quote-unquote hitting coach, wants to be the pitching coach. But you only become a hitting coach when you're coaching a team, you go on the road, you get shut out for 3 straight games, and you have to come back on Monday morning and address your hitters on the plan moving forward.
Yeah.
And if you can get people to not only understand what that message needs to be, then get them to buy into it and keep moving forward with you, you have now become a hitting coach. It's not when things, it's like being a leader. Everybody leads when things are going great,
Yep.
but no one wants to step up and assume responsibility when things are going really bad. That's when you find out who you are as a coach. So I've always looked at, after a loss, here I am coming home, 4th place of the World Series, and I'm looking at it going, where do I need to be better? And I have to accept that responsibility, not run from it, not transfer the blame. It wasn't the players. It wasn't our staff. It was me. I have to be better because there's something I need to adjust to get the best out of our team. And I think the willingness to do that is an acquired skill.
Yeah.
Those are 2 I'll reference for you right now.
I think those are 2 points that they go down to the core, the unfortunate core of that coaching journey, where like part of what makes high-level coaches so good is because almost all of them went through that. Like you see the growth mindset guys really rise to the top because, again, like you said, you're not doing this to get rich.
No doubt.
If you are, you don't last real long. You get in the
doubt.
right?
No doubt.
This is something that at least the guys that I've been able to talk to and learn from, the best that I've seen are so heavily invested in the relationships that they build between their players and other coaches. So
that's right.
Those are awesome points.
Yeah.
So last question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
You spent some time, like you said, as the college division liaison for the ABCA. I think that was 2016, 2019.
Yep.
Did you have a favorite memory of that relationship? I know, and that job for a lot of people is probably a bit obscure. But from what I experienced during that time, living vicariously through social media and you, was it was almost like you had a hand in like the impact that these coaches and teams had, sharing publicity for them through the ABCA.
It was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. One of the best experiences of my life. I came in as the only coach in the office, and I think that's what drew me to the job. It's what drew them to me. Was they wanted a coach that knew what it was like on the ground floor. I sort of created my job and redefined it and added a lot more to my plate. Barnstormers, and we shot a pilot TV show and the podcast and, growing the convention and social media. We took over social media. We had about 4,000 followers, and I think it's like closing in on 50,000. Little things like that were, man, I had freedom to do things that, I needed to learn about, that I just wanted to grow baseball. I wanted to grow coaches. I wanted to do things that were unique. So I came in as a college division liaison. I left as the assistant executive director. And I loved everything about it. It was the best 4 years, most impactful 4 years of my career. And I do think one of the highlights, and I'll get back to a positive one for the big picture, but personally for me, is I really needed a sabbatical away from coaching. I just finished my 11th year. I was sort of burning myself out. But the mission behind why I was coaching, Cody, was my ego was leading the way. It was very self-serving. I was resume building. I was trying to win a championship because I knew it would open up more doors for my career. And, with that, ambition is one thing, but at the core, what your heart is, that's who you are. And I'm really not proud of those first 11 years. I've said that to a lot of my former players, and they, and again, it could be lip service, like, come on, coach, it wasn't that bad. I'm like, well, but I know where my heart was. My heart was, I need better players to win more games to get a better job. I know that's where my thoughts were. And I didn't really realize what the ABCA did or what the God move was, but it was to remove me from coaching so that I could really learn from an associational perspective what real servant leadership is.
Yeah.
What it means to actually serve others, what it means to put others in front of you, knowing you might get yours down the road, but you ain't getting it today.
Yeah.
But it's really redefining where your heart is. Is your heart about those people and helping them and helping grow their programs and helping them share knowledge and helping them uncover new knowledge? And I'm telling you, it took me about 1.5 years of doing the podcast, and I kept hearing, servant leadership and relationships, and it's all about players and I remember the interview, and I heard it for about the 200th time, and
Yeah.
I pushed back in my chair and I'm like, dude, they've been talking to me this whole time and I just wasn't listening. And now I hear it and I go, oh my gosh. And it changed. That's where all the new ideas, that's where Barnstormers, that's where the explosion of some things that we were wanting to do came from, was I understood the mission now. And I do think, yes, the social media piece was great. Helping put a profile or a spotlight on certain programs and certain coaches. We had a hand in probably some folks further in their career, which is great. That's awesome. But I think one of the biggest takeaways to kind of bring it all back is, and Butch, coined this phrase, so I'm going to give him the credit. But I really do feel like one of the core missions of why we did what we did was to make learning cool again. I felt like we had arrived at a place where it was sort of bravado-ish to stand on what you believed in, but you weren't taking in any new information. You weren't seeking conversations out. You weren't really attending the convention or listening to podcasts or attending clinics, but you believed what you believe with no data to back it up. And I think it for that period, and I think the carryover effect has been felt too, it forced coaches to go, wait a minute, you mean to tell me there's a better way? You mean to tell me I can shift what I'm doing and I can take in these calls and if I had $1 for all the phone calls and texts or DMs or, tears I've shed with coaches of, hey man, that stuff made me a better coach. Well, guess what? It made me a better coach because I came back to GGC with a whole new perspective on the impact of coaching and coaches, how to grow and how to really look at things objectively, how to have a growth mindset, and really more than that, how to serve and love my players and make them the priority. And without that 4-year sabbatical, I'm not sitting here talking on the interview with you, man. So I'm forever grateful for that time.
That's awesome. That's some extreme honesty. That's some extreme honesty there, and a great lesson in delayed gratification. I mean, that's super special.
That's it, man.
Thanks again, Sheets, for being on. I want to make sure everyone's aware as well. There's a summit. Are you guys doing the summit again next year?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There's a summit, and Sheets can give you a little bit more on this as well. But there's a summit hosted at GGC. Sheets, if you want to dig in just a little bit on that, go for it.
Yeah. Well, number one, I'd love to connect with anybody watching that needs any kind of guidance or help or just wants to talk the game. My cell phone is 502-767-7680. I'd give you my office number, but I don't know what my office number is. So you can call my cell. Social media is at Coach Sheets 3. I'm willing to help in any way. I think that's what my role in this whole coaching thing is. But yeah, we do a coaching summit in the fall and in the first couple weeks in November. Like I said, I'm doing some coach consulting that I'm willing to open up with you about and talk about. And I think a lot of that is, man, we share a lot. We share a lot through social media. We have a YouTube channel. It's just all about growing the game, man. Anything that we do is completely, available to be asked about. I won't give you our signs, but I'll give you everything but. And I think it's we've learned from others and learned some things here that we just think can help and willing to put it out there. So reach out and connect with me anytime.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. Thanks again to Baseball Bluebook for sponsoring, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.